court to engage with the alleged crimes of other ethnicities as well. Do you think that it would be a bad move from Kosovo if it tries to do something, or just should wait and let the trial happen?
I'm reluctant to get into what would be essentially a political decision that would have to be made. I'm not well informed enough about the consequences or even the procedure or how that would be done. So I don't want to take a position on that. I do want to say, though, that given the fact that the Specialist Chambers is a court of Kosovo, that the Parliament of Kosovo should do what any parliament anywhere in the world does with respect to its own courts, which is ensure that constitutional standards are applied and constitutional protections are applied, that there's an accountability on the part of the court towards the Parliament of Kosovo, because, as I said, this is not a court that belongs to donor countries supplying funds for the court. This is a court that is part of the judicial system of Kosovo, and as such, it should account to the Parliament of Kosovo for its activities.
Okay, at the end, I want to ask you about something else. I know that you're very active on what's happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina, right?
Yes.
And there's this very controversial decision by the High Representative of the new election law, which Mr. Schmidt, imposed just at the election night. And it is called a segregation law. There are a group of MPs from European Parliament who are actually writing to Mr. Schmidt. You think differently, obviously, being a Croatian. Yes. So the news that we get from the Bosnian media is that Bosnian is 4 times less worth than a Croatian and 10 less time worth than a Serb when it comes to electing the representatives in a very complicated political system of Bosnia.
So, extremely complicated answer to an extremely complicated question. I don't think that it has to do with whose vote is valued more, because the whole claim that somebody's vote weighs more or less is based on the presumption that Bosniaks only vote for Bosniak candidates and Croats only vote for Croat candidates and Serbs only vote for Serb candidates. So, but I don't think the people who are saying that this amounts to segregation or et cetera accept that proposition. So they don't accept the very proposition that underlies the argument they're making. My point is this.
But you need less people to vote in order for a Croatian MP to be elected, and you need much more people to vote for a Bosnian, from the Bosnian nation, for a Bosnian MP to be elected, right?
But I would say this, and this is something that the people of Kosovo can understand. Every war in ex-Yugoslavia was fought, at least in part, on the fact that nobody wanted to be an ethnic minority in somebody else's country. Right? Whether it was Croatia in Yugoslavia, or Serbs in Croatia, or Serbs and Croats in Bosnia, or Albanians in Kosovo being a minority in Serbia, or now Serbs in the north of Kosovo don't want to be a minority in Kosovo. Right. This is the fundamental commonality between all of these various conflicts that existed in the 1990s. The solution for Bosnia was that there was a deal struck that said, no one is going to be a minority of the 3 groups. No one will be a minority. You'll all get to participate equally in government.
No matter how big the population is.
Exactly right. No, we're not going to reduce you to a minority, or you to a minority, or you to a minority. We're all going to have a power-sharing agreement. So my point is, Mr. Schmidt's job, actually, is to enforce that agreement. He's not there as the governor of Bosnia to impose his own vision of what Bosnia should look like, whether it should be in the EU or anything like that. That's for the people of Bosnia to decide and to vote. My point is, if there's a power-sharing agreement, then it should be protected that there's a power-sharing agreement, unless the peoples in Bosnia decide differently. And so these differences should not be imposed through numerical superiority or through diktat from the High Representative. He should enforce the deal as it was from 1995.
Which was not the case until now.
What was not the case?
Of the deal being implemented. You say that he should only implement the Dayton deal, right?
Yeah, that's what literally his legal
job
task is. Yeah, that's it. So he's not there to improve the deal or to change the deal. As a matter of fact, his job is to make sure that the deal is not changed unless it's amended in accordance with the amendment procedures of the Dayton Agreement. And so the danger is that if you overwhelm Croats and reduce them to an ethnic minority, that means the Dayton Agreement is basically dead, because no longer do you have a power-sharing agreement. Somebody has now been reduced to an ethnic minority.
And you're open to that, to the Dayton Agreement being declared dead?
No, I'm not open to that. I'm open to it if the three parties agree. So, for example, if they come to a consensus through the procedures of the Dayton Agreement to amend it, that's fine. As a matter of fact, it should be amended. It needs to be amended, but it needs to be amended, in my view, by consensus in order to ensure that there are no more conflicts. And most importantly, my real goal is I believe that Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to be an EU member. And the question is, how do you get it to be an EU member? In my view, it should be through protection of individual civil and human rights, and also the collective rights of the three biggest groups. And if you can set up a Bosnia and Herzegovina like that, then it's the obligation of the European Union countries to make sure that Bosnia is fast-tracked into the European Union.
But there was a direct political interference from Zagreb, right? It was the Croatian government which worked with Mr. Schmidt for this decision.
I would disagree with the characterization of interference. So if you look at the Dayton Agreement, it actually says, it's actually signed, it's an agreement not within Bosnia, it's an agreement between Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And Mr. Schmidt's job in point 2 is to coordinate with the parties, meaning Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia. So it's actually his job to be communicating with Zagreb and Belgrade and Sarajevo in order to ensure that they continue.
But mostly Sarajevo, because the things are happening in Sarajevo.
Well, I think as a factual matter, he does mostly work in Sarajevo. And the fact that he's also communicating with Zagreb and Belgrade is actually, again, literally listed as part of his job description. It's what he's supposed to be doing to ensure the peace.
I thank you very much for this interview, mostly about Kosovo, but yes. I really wanted to talk about Bosnia as well. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks. Ka qenë gjithçka për këtë pjesë të intervistës. Unë kthehemi pas pak me rubrika tjetër. Shëndrojmë.